Chapter 9. She wound her way through neighborhoods, unaware of anything but the fragmented stream of thoughts running through her mind. How dare he? He is right, though. Everyone knows. I didn't wear black long enough. Black is old, and I'm not old. I'm too young to be a widow. Everyone dies. How dare he? Time to move on, he'd said. How can I move on when my dreams keep me a prisoner? There will never be a moving on. Is Simon only brave enough to speak what everyone is thinking? So maybe Philip was sick, but I could have helped him, should have helped him. I could have been enough for him. If I had stayed with him that day, he'd begged me to stay. Eventually she found herself at the cemetery, the place where nobody ever bothered her. Luke wriggled down, and she let him run. Her back ached as she stood in front of her parents' stone. Eyes closed, she calmed her mind and waited for a sense of peace to fill her. She'd been coming to this same spot for 5 years. Even after Philip was buried nearby, she found solace in the familiarity of this spot. No peace came today, only anger. A spring of hot tears leaked from her eyes. If only the pain could fall from her like tears. She knew it wasn't fair to blame Simon, but she hated him. Hated him for his appearance of perfection and what he represented. Hated him for the way he made her lose control of herself. She hated him for the stupid way he talked and for speaking out when he should be silent. She even hated his polished shoes. She hated him the most because everything he said pricked an element of truth in her soul. After kneeling in the grass, she said aloud, "Mama, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sometimes I just don't know how to keep going, how to keep doing the right thing." A footstep crunched in the grass behind her. She turned to see, of all people, Ezekiel James. He stood with one foot raised in the process of backing out of the park.
"I was just leaving,"
he said.
Sorry, I'm leaving. I mean, I wasn't staying, just looking around. I wasn't trying to, I mean... Sorry, I'm going."
He stumbled backward, knocking his shoulder against a tree. A pair of gloves dropped from where they'd been tucked in his trousers. He bent to pick them up, and in his haste dropped one again. Once they were securely in his hands, he waved them at her, offering a sheepish grin. Turning to leave in a rush, he tripped over a bush between him and the path. "Oop!" Eloise covered her mouth to keep from laughing while watching him flail around the bush. It was impossible to turn away from the spectacle. Once untangled, a hound with his tail tucked couldn't have crawled away more dejected than he did, after he found solid ground at least. She sniffed and wiped both eyes with the palm of her hand. "Mr. James?" He turned, scratching the back of his neck absently.
"Yeah?"
"Were you looking for someone?" His mouth moved, but no words came out. Then he shrugged.
"No."
"What are you doing?"
"Well, I was leaving."
He jerked a thumb over his shoulder. She laughed, despite the tears drying on her cheeks. "Before that, what are you doing all the way out here?" He shrugged again.
"I'm embarrassed to say, but I was hiding. I'm about as close to getting fired as a man can be, so I'm sulking, and the other boys usually fight for the washroom when we return. I was wandering around before returning to Palmer's."
"Fired? It can't be. How can you be fired from working the pit?"
"Daydreaming on the job is a good start. Dee doesn't mess around."
"Dreaming of your ocean, Mr. James?"
"Something like that. And it's Zeke. Just Zeke."
"Okay, Zeke, tell me how someone with your skills can be fired from working the pit."
"Shoveling clay is a poor example of my skills."
"How about wrestling? I'd give 50-50 odds to that bush." He shook a finger at her and smirked.
"Now listen here, young lady."
Making a show of carefully walking around the bush, he made his way to her. Pointing behind, he said,
I hate to make a scene in front of women and children.
He tipped his hat to Luke, who was busy pulling the heads off dandelions.
But that bush should not be there. Whoever designed this place
He waved his hands widely.
should have taken into account that a man might have need of that space.
Eloise laughed at him. I like that bush. It will have pink flowers on it soon. She wiped a stray tear with the back of her hand. Zeke softened his voice and cast his eyes to the ground.
I didn't mean to intrude. I'd offer to make it all better for you, but my guess is it's out of my skill set.
Thank you. She gently dabbed at her eyes and wiped her nose, and watched Luke running around and around her parents' gravestone. Zeke tiptoed behind and jumped out at Luke just as the boy came around the corner. Luke squealed and fell on his bottom. Placing his hands on the ground and sticking his end high in the air, Luke stood and ran around the other way, laughing. Anticipating Zeke to chase him, he wasn't disappointed. Zeke lurched as if to run, but when Luke took off one direction, Zeke surprised him by going the other way and caught him on the other side. Another squeal, another fall, and more toddler giggles. Zeke ruffled the boy's hair and glanced at Eloise. Suddenly he hit the ground behind the stone and waited for Luke to find him. Luke didn't. When he didn't see Zeke, he wandered off the other way. Eloise put her hands on the stone and leaned over. You're off the hook. Zeke flashed her a smile. Nodding to the stone, he asked,
Who are these folks?
My parents. They were taken the same year. He held her gaze. While brushing himself off, he came around to her side to read the names.
What were they like?
Despite the sensitive topic, a soft smile in his expression encouraged her to share. He didn't say he was sorry. He didn't shy away or pity her. Instead, he got comfortable. He moved himself to the nearby tree, stretching out a leg and resting his arm on his pulled-up knee. They were wonderful. And they were. She had no reason to trust Zeke, yet there she stood, nose still running, face blotchy from crying. She felt safe. His presence and humor made things feel better. She wanted to tell him everything, to pour out her heartache and troubles. She wanted to be seen and understood. She sat opposite him, leaning against the stone. They loved each other. They loved me. Mama always pushed me to have fun, to go out and do things with other people.
You didn't want to go out?
No, I was content. Even at 14, Philip had been her world. She'd had Philip to occupy her every thought, much as she did now, though he wasn't here. I didn't think I needed anything more than I already had. Maybe Mama was right. Zeke cocked his head and waited for more. She watched him, remembering the long conversations she'd had with her mother. She would often brush her hair or work on mending while they talked late into the evenings.
Right about what?
Zeke asked. About Philip. She knew Zeke was leaving and her secrets would be safe. Things she had never fully divulged to Jessica now came tumbling out. The last day. It was February. Jessica and a few of us were going to see if the creek was still frozen. We didn't get the chance to play very often anymore. We were no longer children, but the sun was out and the wind had stopped. She picked a clover in the grass and began pulling the leaves off. Philip didn't want to go and begged me not to. I didn't listen. I was upset with him. She glanced at Zeke and his face softened. She tossed the clover aside and picked another.
Was there an accident on the ice?
No, Eloise said. Her answer was almost too soft to hear, and she added a slight shake of her head. It happened afterward. She pulled her knees to her chest, wrapped her arms around them, and rested her chin on her knees. Philip needed me, more than was natural. Nobody understood him like I did. I was his light. He'd said I was God's special light, his gift, and he didn't know how he'd go on without me. She shook her head. Mama died before things were serious, but I think somehow she knew how it was between us and tried to protect me, perhaps to keep me from taking on that kind of responsibility. How I loved him. She sighed, picking the bits of grass from her skirts. But it wasn't enough. I don't know how to explain it. Luke came over and fell into her lap. Eloise snuggled him and kissed his hair. "But I have you, little guy." She squeezed him tightly. "What would we ever do without you?" Zeke cleared his throat.
Philip is...
"Dead." Eloise set Luke on his feet and brushed a leaf from his hair. "He asked me not to go. I did, and now he's dead. My parents are dead. Philip's dead. Katie's dead."
I'm glad you have Luke.
Zeke didn't appear shocked at any of her confessions. "For now, until Tobias remarries," she thought.
Did I tell you I'm an orphan?
Eloise shook her head. "When did it happen?"
Mama died when I was 12, and I only have vague memories of Papa. He was caught up in the war and never came back.
"Where did you go? Did you have any other family?"
I do now, in a way. Paul and Beatrice Donnelly took me in. I have 6 brothers and sisters now. It was a good home. Different from what I was used to as an only child, but good."
"But not good enough to stay." He shrugged. Remembering how he'd stormed away from her a few days ago, she felt she'd asked too much. "Excuse me, I shouldn't pry."
It's not that it isn't or wasn't good enough. It was great, you know. I mean, to have a family take me in like that and make me one of their own. It's not that I'm not grateful, because I am, but I'm not a farmer. I don't want to be a farmer. There's lots of things I could do, and so much more to see.
He set his hat on the ground, running both hands through his hair before clasping them behind his neck. He sighed.
I don't know, Chipmunk. Do you ever feel like everyone's got a plan for your life and forgot to ask how you felt about it first?
"Why do you call me that?" He grinned at her.
Wouldn't you like to know?
She pulled a handful of grass and threw it at him. The wind caught most of it. She watched it drift. "I envy you."
How so?
"You wanted to go, so you did. To have that kind of freedom, to be brave enough to take a chance."
Stupid enough, you mean? Did you get a good look at the goober who fell on his face? That man was lonely, dirty, and starving.
Eloise did remember and blushed, thinking of it. "At least you kept smiling through it. I think I've forgotten how to have fun."
I just do what makes me happy, within reason. Fried chicken makes me happy. Catching frogs makes me happy. Singing makes me happy. What makes you happy?
What did make her happy? Some things used to make her happy, but she was stumped now as she considered his question. The last time she'd gone out with the sole purpose of having fun, it hadn't ended well. Zeke prodded.
There isn't anything you do that makes all the bad stuff disappear for a while?
"I don't know. If there is, I've forgotten."
How about when you were a child, before life stepped in and messed it all up? There's got to be something.
Eloise chewed on her lip, thinking, this question shouldn't be so hard. Surely there is something. She chuckled, thinking of silly childhood games. Climbing trees.
Well, let's climb some trees.
"Now?" she asked, alarmed.
Sure, why not?
Zeke shoved his Stetson on his head and scanned the cemetery. He wouldn't find any nearby. Any of the trees here were hardly big enough to hold her weight.
Hey, where's Luke?
"Oop!" She chided herself for losing track of him. "Luke!" Climbing on top of the gravestone, she saw his little blonde head bobbing behind another stone. Pointing him out, she said, "He's just there." Suddenly, she remembered the note in her pocket and why she had left the house this afternoon. She began to teeter on the top of the stone. Zeke stepped closer and offered his hand. When she grabbed it to steady her balance, her stomach flipped. It wasn't until Zeke cleared his throat that she realized she'd been staring at their hands. For how long? She didn't know.
Coming down?
Zeke asked. He winked at her.
Unless you want to keep the high ground, by all means, don't let me foil your plans.
He dropped her hand and backed up a step. She didn't miss the breath he took, as if he'd been holding it.
Zeke splayed his fingers and shook out his hand. He wrapped his arm around his front and tucked it into his side, trying to rub off the odd way his stomach was feeling. She'd been about to fall. Only a cold-hearted fool would have done less. It was completely appropriate to offer a hand, but his stomach did a weird thing and clogged his lungs. And then, after the way she'd looked at him, he was intimately aware of his accelerating heart rate. He'd wanted to ask her more before the hand-holding incident, but held his tongue. Not usually a strength of his. Who was Philip? Who was Katie? Eloise jumped to the ground and headed toward Luke. She called over her shoulder.
"If you'll excuse me, I do have to run. We've business to take care of in town."
He scrambled back to his tree and checked to make sure both gloves were still tucked at his waist. "I'll walk with you." He waited for her to fetch Luke from the other side of the cemetery and fell in line next to her on the side of the road. Preoccupying himself, he tried to identify every tree they passed, and failed. He had more questions now than before. "What's this tree?" he asked. She followed his gaze and shrugged.
"I don't know."
"How about this one?" He pointed to the left.
"That one will have large white flowers for a few days and then foot-long bean pods."
"Fascinating. What's it called?"
"I don't know."
"Tell me about this one," he pestered.
"Zeke!"
She laughed.
"I don't know anything about trees."
"Then we are of the same mind. And if it makes you laugh, I'll keep asking." If only she could see herself. How he loved that laugh. "Not love, Zeke. It's a nice laugh. Let it be." A cold gust of wind caught under the brim of his hat. He held it in place to prevent its escape. Luke ducked his head into her shoulder.
"Oofda."
She strained against the wind. Talking was out of the question for the next few minutes, as the wind only grew stronger. They turned the corner onto the main street, and the wind immediately let up. He took his hand from his hat and checked to see if the gloves were still safe. Luke squirmed to be let down, but she hitched him up on her hip again. "Let me carry Luke, if he'll come to me," Zeke said. She stopped walking, and her mouth hung open. Her large eyes darted between him and the toddler, but she didn't argue. Handing him over, Luke settled in Zeke's arms.
"He grows heavier by the day. Thank you."
A flash of her surprised face reminded him of when he'd shoved the basket lunch into her arms and left her standing on the hill. "Chip, Eloise, I'm sorry about the other day. I was rude." She walked with her arms hugging her body against the cold. Her bonnet still hid the side of her face, but she wasn't using it to hide today. She looked at him when she spoke.
"Things have a way of working themselves out sometimes."
"How so?"
"Luke and I had a fine picnic."
Zeke tipped his head and laughed. He bumped his shoulder into hers as they walked. Her blue eyes sparkled with mischief. She raised both hands and shoved his shoulder. Luke giggled and tried to grab her, and Zeke went along with it. Flipping Luke to face outward, he took the toddler's leg and kicked her shoulder. More laughter from the boy ensued when she feigned surprise. "Shall we get her?" he whispered to Luke. Eloise skipped ahead, staying just out of Luke's reach. Whenever they were close enough to grab her, she ran away again. Luke was in toddler heaven, squealing with laughter. They were in front of Palmer's in no time. "You owe me a lunch," he said. "No, what are you doing?" This wasn't just any girl. Why did he keep putting his foot in his mouth? And here he thought he was doing so well in keeping himself from prying about Philip and Katie. And then she replied,
"How about a dinner tomorrow night?"
He was speechless again. Her expression perplexed him. Her half-smile made him think she was teasing, but he didn't see the joke. Thankfully, he had an out. He snapped his fingers. "Doggone it, I'm already booked for dinner. Boss beat you to it." She laughed as though he were incredibly funny. Women were confusing.
"I hope I didn't rush you,"
she said.
"Do you think you've stalled long enough for the washroom? I have business with Jessica."
"Never mind. I'll manage."
Eloise found Jessica in the backyard cutting the first asparagus harvest. "Well, hello," said Jessica upon viewing Eloise's light smile. "What's put the bounce in your step today?" "Simon, ha!" She shook her head. No, but isn't it sort of wonderful how you can be blazing angry one minute and then God plops someone right in your path to help smooth things over? Uh-oh, what's happened? Simon Oakfield happened again. I'll admit the man is obnoxious, Jessica said, but essentially harmless. He invited me to the dance Friday, among other things. Jessica laughed. She stood with a handful of asparagus in one hand and the paring knife in the other. Elle, the man has a right to ask a single woman to a dance. He's not the first man to show an interest. She punctuated her words by waving the knife around. Eloise flopped dramatically to the grass. Oh, I know, and stop pointing that at me. Honestly, if you had only heard the way he spoke to me. It was just like a teacher reprimanding a wayward student. He didn't just ask. He practically told me what to do, and implied so much that was not in his right to say. Jessica tossed the stalks onto Eloise's lap and went to work looking for more. I'm sorry he was rude. Eloise took a bite of the smallest one and gathered the rest into a neat pile. Those are for dinner. Don't eat too many. Yes, ma'am. What if you did go? Not with him, but with me. You and I could go, and it might be a simple way to break the ice without committing to anything, anyone. You needn't worry about dancing. Just be there. Do you think I've cloistered myself too? Jessica sliced another spear and took the bundle of asparagus from Eloise. I don't expect it will ever be the right time, truly. You will never wake up and not have lost a husband. Your marriage to him and his death will always be a part of who you are. But maybe, and I say this with all my love, maybe it would be enjoyable, someday, to be with another man. Jessica let out a frustrated laugh. But who am I to give advice? I'm going to end up an old maid. Eloise clapped her hands to her cheeks. Oh, I forgot. That terrible Simon and his dad-blamed fitted suit. Good news and fresh bread should not be hidden away. Here. She dug the note from her pocket and shoved it into Jessica's hand. Read it aloud. Jessica smoothed the crumpled paper and read, Dear Miss Palmer, please will you go with me Friday? I'll pick you up at 7. Eloise clapped her hands. Well? I don't know. This handwriting is atrocious. If I had to answer based on that, then I'm saying no. And there's no signature. She checked the back of the paper and read the front again. Are we in grammar school passing notes? He's picking me up at 7, but what if I don't want to go? Land sakes, Elle, stop grinning at me like that. Who is it from? It's from Mr. Swenson. Roy! After a round of squeals and Eloise telling and retelling Jessica the whole story about her conversation with Roy, the girls discussed what Jessica would wear and how she should do her hair. She had been to the Friday social many times, but never with the one man in all the world she pined for. When the excitement subsided, Jessica looked around the yard. Hey, where's Luke? Zeke has him. Last I saw, he was playing horsey or something in the parlor. Eloise jumped off the grass, just remembering the beans she'd left on the stove at home. I have to run, Jess. So sorry. Dinner is either cold or burned. Tobias will wonder what's become of us. She flew back into the house to grab Luke, waving a hand behind her. Jessica hollered after her, Tobias knows where to find you. That was true. The brickyard, the cemetery, the Palmers, and, on occasion, the smithy. She could be found in few other places. When had she become so predictable?